everybody. It's Ronnie, you know, blue-eyed native over here at Daybreak Star Radio, and I am bringing you another interview with a very, very talented individual who currently has his work on exhibit here at the Daybreak. Well, I'm actually doing this interview from home, but we're our home of Daybreak Star Radio at the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center in our Sacred Circle Gallery. And his name is Jeremy Dennis. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Ronnie, for having me.
No problem. Thank you. So, first, if you could just, if for our listeners, if you could just introduce yourself, let, let them know your tribal affiliation and stuff like that.
Oh, sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Jeremy Dennis. I'm from the Shinnecock Indian Nation, all the way on the other side of the country in Southampton, New York. We're a small community. We're unfortunately overshadowed by the Hamptons in, I guess, popular culture, and that's what most people see Long Island as. So I'm a photographer. I do portraiture and landscape, and I always try to maybe present it or create work with education in mind. So I'm always trying to share or celebrate Shinnecock history or current day stories and issues, and you try to come up with new ideas.
Nice, nice. So, if you could give us a little bit more about your background and what inspired you to pursue a career in art and photography.
Oh, sure. I was fortunate to have a artist as a mother. So my mom's name is Denise Silva Dennis. She went through the same career path that I did, which is going to school for studio art. But in her generation, she was discouraged even by her own professors and teachers. Being a woman artist at that time and being a native artist, there was just so many expectations. And so it's hopefully better now. But yeah, she pretty much wanted to do the same path that I did, but instead kind of guided me as an artist and supported me throughout the, I guess, the last decade or so. That's how long I've been pursuing the arts. So my father isn't an artist, but also the same amount of support. And then we also have a really amazing photographer here on Shinnecock. His name's Herbert Randall, and he's renowned for his 1960s photos during the Freedom Summer in Mississippi. So I didn't know during the time I was doing undergrad in photography, but he was my mentor, teaching me 35 millimeter and lending me his equipment. And so later, as a photographer, I learned about his celebrated career, and that's kind of a common theme. So I have my mom, my parents, my cousin Herbert, and then finally went to Penn State. It wasn't until this time, kind of in grad school, that I really focused on photography. And I had a couple of mentors and teachers that were influential. And I think at the top of the list is Lonnie Graham, who's still at Penn State, but he's a really amazing photographer and advisor. And so he sometimes advises like Hank Willis Thomas and Carrie Mae Weems, but he's kind of like in the background, giving advice and helping people out. So I've had so many people who have made a change in my artist career, but those are some of the top people.
So, off topic, not a question I wrote down, but I got to know, what was the first camera you used?
Oh, I don't even know the name of it, but it was a Minolta
Minolta.
35 millimeter. That's in my professional. But then my mom tells people stories of just giving me like a disposable camera with no film in it. And I was even serious as a toddler.
Nice. So, how does your heritage and identity as a member of the Shinnecock influence your artistic vision and themes, that you explore in your work?
Oh, thank you for this question. A lot of the work that I do as an artist is out of a need or out of a desire to communicate important ideas and stories. And I always go back to, funnily enough, a Teen Vogue article it's something to the effect of invisibility as the modern form of racism against Native Americans. And so I think in New York State and east of the Mississippi, especially, people are just so surprised that Native Americans are even around, or if we are around, when they see us face to face in person, they just deny our existence even then, just due to the fact that we're maybe like too mixed race or too white or too black passing and so on. So a lot of the work that I do as a photographer, trying to raise up Shinnecock, is showing the truth of who we are and trying to kind of educate people as to the various ways that we appear. And I always think it's an interesting thing, um, thinking about representation, especially with Native American culture, because one of the funny things I always think back to is like the modern day Americans look so different, and yet we're all like a mixed nation, and no one questions that. The other thing is, just as a joke, that no one looks like the founding fathers anymore, but we don't question like America as a nation. So I think that's a disparity because people love to see us at powwow. I also love powwow, but it's adorning ourselves with the traditional attire, like the buckskin leather and other materials. And so I try to balance traditional imagery in my photography and contemporary issues, and try to find a connection between both at all times.
Nice. Do you find it hard sometimes, or does it come naturally? Or, I mean,
I think it's there's so many projects I want to pursue. All the projects that I do have already are ever ongoing. I have one project called On This Site, and it's supposed to be a site-specific history of Long Island's native history. So of course that's 120 miles wide, the length of Long Island. It also dates back 10,000 years up to the present. So that's a project that probably needs 10 people or 100 people to work on and finally complete. So what I do as an artist is I try to branch out into sub-themes and different topics within that huge content of history. And that's where the Rise project came out of. It's the idea of mapping, this idea of contested lands, the land back movement, and many other themes of just trying to educate the public to maybe pursue something beyond land acknowledgements.
hmm, but thank you for that. Yeah, it's time to start looking beyond land acknowledgements, definitely.
Yeah.
So my next question was, which you hit on a little, but as you said, your work often addresses, themes of identity, culture, and history. What is the overall message you really hope to convey through your art, and what the importance of that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think about this question all the time with other artists too. This is a central like umbrella message. But I think with my work, it's mostly it's probably going to be like the stereotypical message among Native people, but we're still here as an idea.
Hmm.
So I think it resonates nationwide with all 570 plus tribal nations. And I think it's something that can sometimes become abstract or kind of blurry or in the background. It's said so much. But I think that Shinnecock as a community and as a nation and as a family has such a big potential and a future role in the world. So as a sovereign nation, and we're self-determinate. And so I try to get people to first like learn about us or know about us at all. Then I try to tell people that we're self-governing, and then I tell people that we have issues that we have to fix, not just Shinnecock, but us in this region. So we're also fighting for a territory that was stripped from us in the 19th century, and that's like the the end goal of all the work that I try to do. So it's yeah, I think with the history project that I pursue, that's always a great resource. But some of the projects that I do outside of that, I'm hoping it'll just become like common knowledge or not even a question of like, should we give land back to Indigenous people?
Hmm, nice. So let's dive into your creative process a little. I'm, basically, can you, describe your creative process? What steps you take, from, your initial concept to, the finished piece?
Oh, sure. Well, sometimes I feel like I have a jaded career as an artist or like a chip on my shoulder because I went to school originally for computer science, and when that didn't work out, I think that because I got a scholarship for that, and that's like the big thing that everyone needs right now, and it's good for like revenue and things that you could bring back to your community. I think switching to art, I always felt like I had to like go above and beyond just creating like beautiful imagery or work that just celebrates Shinnecock. And so it always comes with research and education. So I always try to like read whatever I can, whether it's books or articles or the latest news, and try to pick sections or important ideas that need to be elevated. So when it comes to Shinnecock, we don't have our own a newspaper. We do have a newsletter within the community, but I think telling our own story is something that's important, but doesn't happen right now. We also don't have a open or functioning museum. So that's another avenue of not being able to tell our story to visitors who do have an interest but don't have a way to connect. And I think it's those two things combined with the fact that in the Hamptons, there's almost no, um, I guess, opportunities for people to learn about Shinnecock. The only thing that's in Southampton is when you look at the garbage cans, you see a caricature of a colonist meeting this one individual native stereotypical image. And they're like meeting on the beach, and they have the European sailboat in the back. And that's the only kind of an inclusion of Shinnecock, and it doesn't even say um, Shinnecock in it. So there's just so much to do in terms of filling in the gap of representation. And so I feel like because of that and the need to share about our culture, I try to figure out like what do I have the passion for right now, or what direction do I go in, because there's so much to catch up on when it comes to public education. So I see it as kind of like when a painter's in the studio, they probably have like three or four canvases set up, and they go back to back to each project whenever they feel the need or if it's relevant to the times.
Hmm. Hmm. That's so those that sounds unfortunately like some really big challenges that the Shinnecock have to overcome, and that's unfortunate. And I can see how that has very much influenced your art. And I'm wondering, what are some of the challenges for you, that you faced in your career, other than, just trying to get that story out there? And, how have you overcome them?
Um, I think that is, I always think about how everything's connected. So hope I don't repeat some things, but um, I think there's so many wonderful Indigenous museum workers right now. I think more and more people are getting employed and going to school for that. But it's really just like a dozen or two people who are like being pulled in all directions to do every single museum show, like the native show. So you don't want to overburden them with like more work or like new directions. So I'm always trying to figure out as an artist who maybe wants to sell things, things that are sellable. It's so hard to find a gallerist or someone to represent you who knows anything about our tribal nation at all and about indigenous issues. And then there's a whole issue of just like capitalism. And sometimes that's a common theme within Native art. Just the idea of like we're trying to criticize colonialism, and capitalism is embedded in that. So I think how we're set up now as like a society and as artists, you do have to sell things at the end of the day to survive. So I think it's just trying to figure out a different way, which is so hard in general. Like if you're a farmer and you don't want to deal with money, or if you have like a nonprofit and don't want to deal with money, It's all these things that you're forced into. And so what we did end up doing here at Shinnecock is my family and I started a nonprofit. So I try to keep my work as an artist separate from it. And we mostly work with other artists of color. But this has been a great way to kind of build a space. So the strange thing about Ma's house, that's the nonprofit's name, is it's my grandmother's home. So it's a family home. And I live here as well. And it's kind of like a communal art space. So I think in some parts of the world or in the country, that's like a common practice to have like a home upstairs or apartment upstairs, the business downstairs type of thing.
So that actually brings me to my next question, actually, which is a great lead in. I was going to ask you, what was the inspiration behind Ma's house? How did, that all come about?
Oh, sure. Well, the biggest thing was the changing world event, COVID-19, of course. So I was actually, before I get to Ma's house, I was a residency hopping artist. So I would go residency to residency all year round with maybe like a week or so between them and just create work in these spaces. Just because back home, I just had like my little computer desk in my room, staying with family, and that was my whole artist studio. And so I would go to residencies to pursue new work, meet new people, kind of escape the bubble of the reservation. And so the pandemic happened, and I was actually at a residency and kind of like got the last plane out. And everything was canceled after that with social distancing. And so around June 2020, my family and I, all in the same predicament, decided to try to save our family home, which was just down the road. This was built in the 1960s, but it was using recycled materials from 1845. And so my grandfather was a self-taught general contractor. He took apart a parsonage, which like I don't think most people try to do this nowadays, just like take apart a house and move it, or people just try to start fresh with the latest material. So we're still using some of that as part of the structure, but it just means it's a much older house than it looks. And so we eventually had to move out when I was 13 or 14, just due to the disrepair and how outdated it was. There was just like mold and structural issues. And so I would say maybe a decade later or two, we finally had the time to put it together and just try to make it livable once again. It was so bad that there were like holes from the outside inside. There were raccoons living inside. The whole basement was just like a caked in white mold. So it was just a terrible situation. And so we started a GoFundMe to see if we can even pursue trying to fundraise and make it possible. I think most people know nationwide that like, the Hamptons is one of the most expensive places to live. And on top of that, real estate and like building materials is the most expensive thing. And so we somehow miraculously fundraised enough to redo the heating, redo the plumbing, get some volunteers to do some of the work. And we thought that because of this generosity, we had over 400 people contribute in many different ways. We decided to turn it into a communal art space and basically have the practice of reciprocity. So just the amazing gifts that we received, we wanted to give that back in some way. And so the BIPOC in our name, the full name is called Ma's House and BIPOC Art Studio. My family and I decided to primarily support not just Native artists, not just Shinnecock, but artists of color, because in May 2020, that was the time when George Floyd was murdered. And so this was the height of the BLM movement. We were seeing police brutality. And on top of that, of course, it was the pandemic. So I think a lot of the people on the east end of Long Island and the Hamptons, we just saw firsthand that like the wealthy in New York City just came out. They just lived with their parents. They just took like a 2 year long vacation and everything was good. But people of color didn't have that luxury of, I don't have 2 years of savings, I don't have a second home in the Hamptons I can escape to. And so that resulted in just needlessly um, being affected by COVID. Many people had their lives lost. Many people didn't have health insurance. So it was troubling times for communities of color. And so even though we're a small nation, we decided to try to create an art space and use the arts as a healing for people of color. And so we currently have a residency program. We've hosted over 43 artists. We also have weekly workshops. We have year-round exhibits and many other great programs. And I think it's just, even though we're 2 years old, pretty much, I feel like we're just getting started with what's possible.
Nice. Nice. Doing good work. Doing good. And how can people find out more about Ma's house?
Well, we do have a website. It's www.mazhouse.studio. But I always tell people if they're on Instagram, that's where we post the most things.
Okay, nice. So going back to your work, looking back at your body of work, do you have any favorite projects or pieces that stand out to you, and what makes them special?
Oh, sure. Well, the Rise project, I have a series from 2018 that's still ongoing, and it's currently on view at the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center. And this is my favorite project because I think it's very nuanced. It's very, like I said before, balance is a word I use a lot because I think that if I saw this work out in like a contemporary art gallery and it wasn't a native artist, I'd probably have a lot of questions and problems with it. But I think that when you like spend years looking at your tribal history and presenting just like landscapes and the beauty of that, sometimes it's still natural, sometimes it's destroyed and built upon. And you spend so much time at powwows and photographing relatives and different tribal nations. I think the fact that I arrived at the Rise Project eventually is something I still have to think about and how did that happen? And sometimes you have to be your own critic. Like I said before, we're still waiting for more and more Indigenous art critics and Indigenous curators and art writers. So I think the Rise Project is my favorite because it involves self-portraiture. It shows myself adorned in traditional regalia. The only thing is I use a wig. So sometimes I describe it as like the Boston Tea Party. The colonists dressed up like the Mohawk Indians in upstate and rebelled against the British as a sign of independence. And so I think of this body of work as a proposal. So I'm hoping that one day we just go out, we reoccupy lands that have been taken from Shinnecock. And I was reading about in the Seattle area, the Fort Lawton peaceful
Mhm.
occupation. And so this is such a great way of just showing, like first and foremost, that Indigenous people are here. It also makes you question like who's really trespassing and are these lands that are unceded actually free and available just for purchase and ownership and exploitation. And another reason I love the Rise project is because it tries to pull from these different occupation movements. So like the Wounded Knee and occupation at Alcatraz are also famous.
Mm.
And looking back at the Northeast, it was so contested, the relations between Europeans and Native people early on, that you couldn't even have three people, like three Native men, assemble on their own, just because there was fear that we would be conspiring for violence or conspiring for war. And so just the idea of occupation or assembly of Indigenous people as an Indigenous act is powerful. And then as a art form, creating images in this way I just love seeing that because this isn't something that you normally see in photos or in paintings, just the idea of Indigenous unity in that way. And I think about that a lot here at Shinnecock too. So I'm talking about a bunch of like random things, but one of the things that's always on my mind at Shinnecock is even though there's only 600 of us living on territory, it's even more fractured than that when it comes to like communal ambitions and politics. Just because I'm sure on other reservations there's family drama, there's political drama. We can't come together on one decision. So the Rise project is kind of a ambition in that way too. Just the idea that we're fighting amongst ourselves too much, and what can we do if we come together?
Nice, nice. That's sounds like hefty work. So what besides the Rise Project and the Daybreak Star Indigenous Cultural Center here, what else can we look forward to? What other projects can people look forward to, or pieces or gallery exhibits or anything?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's so much going on. Summertime here in the Hamptons is where all the like, uh, art shows and all the events are happening. So I'm having a bunch of shows throughout the rest of the season into the fall. I also encourage if anyone's coming to New York State to come visit at Ma's house. We're open by appointment. One thing I don't think I mentioned before is we have a amazing library of over 450 Native American books. So those are
Hmm,
browsable in person, but you can also check out our online catalog, which has them all as well.
nice.
And I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is, in addition to art, I sometimes curate. And so this July 7th, we're having a group show of Shinnecock artists here at Ma's house. So we'll have 27 artists, and we'll have a Shinnecock caterer. We'll have some, hopefully some entertainment, and really just celebrating Shinnecock. It's something that needs to happen more.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, um, technically my last question, and we always like to ask this because we always look towards our youth because they're what keep our culture going afterward. So my question is, what advice would you give to not just all Indigenous, but just young Shinnecock and people who are inspiring to make a career out of art? Like, what are some of the key lessons you've learned over time that might be important for you to share with them?
Oh, sure. Oh, we do have a great series of youth programs here at Shinnecock. So we have a brand new preschool. We have also a Shinnecock Boys and Girls Club. They're also doing such great work. And I would give them the advice that I think all of us here at Shinnecock and many Native people don't realize they're artists, what they do day to day. So some of us like sing in the shower, some of us dance when we're waiting for the bus, some of us draw in the doodles of our pages. But I think we discount like our talent and what we're capable of and the message we can tell. So I'm hoping that more and more there'll be, especially here at Shinnecock, more artists coming up, being proud of their work, and learning the skills to eventually become artists as well. I'm learning that there's so many opportunities, and it always kind of goes to the same few artists, even outside of Shinnecock. You always see the same native artists coming up. And so I think there's so much demand, there's so much desire to see native art and support native artists. So I think that if you want to do it, if you put in the work, it's definitely something you can do.
Nice. Nice. So, where can people find out more about you?
My website's hopefully simple. It's just jeremynative.com, or you can probably Google my website as well. Uh,
That's a pretty good website name.
oh yeah, someone else had jeremydennis.com and yeah, lost a chance.
It's still a good one. It's still a good one. Well, I want to thank you so much for speaking with me. I have enjoyed viewing your work for the last couple months here at the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center. And yeah, I wish you all the best and so much more success, and definitely a lot of success for your Rise project.
Oh, well, thank you so much again, Ronnie, for having me, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Have a good one.